Yes. Good morning. We'll give everyone just a minute or two to hop in this morning with us. And then today is our Regal webinar focused on healthcare. So last Wednesday, if you were with us, we did insurance focused. We'll obviously go through Regal as a whole, what we're doing over here, and our ICP and verticals in general. And then we have Julia from our sales team with us today to go through in deeper dive what we're doing in the healthcare space. So same as last week and for the next week's coming up, please ask questions. Please raise your hand, or we have Cortland on the back end taking notes for us. So if you have questions for me going through, or once Julia talks more about healthcare, if we want to keep that specific to that vertical, that would be great. And all right, I think we're ready to jump right in. So yes, we are at Regal, and what we're doing is we're an end-to-end contact center solution for your outbound teams. So think any of your customers who have outbound sales, outbound focused agents, where they're reaching out to their own customers to drive revenue. So again, we're an end-to-end solution, but we have different components where customers can start and really just, again, drive that revenue, increase those sales conversions, lift those answer rates. So why Regal was created, right? Our founders came from Angie's List, if you are familiar, and they ran the contact center at Angie's List. And they really saw this old way of what was happening, of this one size fits all. So ideally, they had a lot of outbound outreach. They were trying to engage and create sales. And what was happening was just they had lists of numbers that they were just calling and calling and calling. There was no real customization or personalization to these phone calls. It was just, we have a list. We're going to keep calling. We'll call them at 8. We'll call them at noon. We'll call them at 4 for 5 days in a row. And hopefully someone picks up the phone. What's problematic about that is you don't know who's calling. Think of if you guys on the end are getting a phone call and it says spam likely, you're not answering the phone. Or even if it's just a number you don't know, even if it doesn't say spam. Today, no one's doing that. So they had this intel of people who were coming to the website and people who wanted to make these purchases, but just had no way to really connect with these customers on the back end. So they went and created Regal, as your traditional CCaaS out there today is really focused on those inbound efforts. So customer success, customer service, customer support. But there was no real focus, again, on any type of customization from an outbound perspective. So Q Regal, what we're doing here is we're working alongside of those big contact centers. You can keep your traditional CCaaS for that inbound effort, totally fine. And then peel those outbound focus agents off to live within Regal. So what they're doing is, again, they're customizing these workflows. They're customizing this outreach and these phone calls. And we'll go through how we're doing that in just a minute. But the main goal of why is to drive revenue, get people more likely to answer the phone, to have more high intent conversations, and ideally close the sale quicker and just more sales in general. So again, we focus on how are we connecting with these people? If they're coming into our website or they're coming into our space or they're digging around somewhere, think your financial services, your banks, your insurance companies. When you take out loans, think mortgages, healthcare, which again, we'll talk about in more detail today. How are we connecting with these people? How are we getting them to pick up the phone or come to our website or just drive more intent in general? But it's not just connecting with them. How are we converting them? How are we making that sale at the end of the day? It's one thing to be able to call and get someone to recognize your number, but it's more important, obviously, for them to pick up the phone and have, a great conversation on the back end. And then how do we test this? How do we make sure that what we're doing is working? If we're sending text messages in addition to these outbound phone calls, is that the right way to go? Once we're having these intent conversations, what kind of conversational intelligence can we use to make sure the agent then continues to have good conversations that are leading to more sales? So this is really the whole point. Connecting with your customers, getting them to convert into the sale, whatever sale means to you. Again, healthcare is going to be a little different. And then how do we test to make sure the efforts that we're putting forth here are working? So really, first and foremost, where does Regal fit in? How do I start thinking about Regal? I'm looking at it like, if I'm going to my customers, number one question off the bat, Do you have an outbound facing or a customer facing sales team? Do you have a group of agents who are specifically calling outbound or any type of outbound efforts today? If the answer is yes to that question, Regal is a fit. We'll go into a little bit more deeper why Regal's a fit, but if that answer is yes, great. Let's start thinking Regal. If the answer is no, and it's no, we have a large inbound contact center. Transparently, Regal's not the fit. We are really focused on this outbound effort that, again, doesn't exist in the contact centers today. So one size fits all, we're looking to customize that workflow. So once you confirm that your customers have this outbound outreach and they're making this outbound engagement, then you can start to ask these strategic questions of what issues are you having around, what you're using technology-wise for that outbound team today? We know if they're not using a solution like Regal, that they're not having any personalization or customization into those conversations. So are they having difficulty getting people to pick up the phone? And they really need to increase those answer rates. With Regal, our customers see about a 30% answer rate. To give you an idea of what that means, industry standard using traditional CCaaS and other tools is about 3 to 5%. So if you can go right to your CFO and say, yeah, we just changed our answer rates, our agents getting people on the phone to 30%, huge, immediate ROI. But again, it's type of omni-channel. Again, do we want to add text messages in addition to phone calls? Do we want to personalize that workflow that they're going through? Someone's on my website asking questions, and then they kind of pause using the digital or the automated or bots, and then they kind of abandon cart or walk away from that screen. I now use that data at Regal to reach out to them directly and say, hey, Courtland, I saw that you had a question around interest rates and, you kind of paused. Can I help you with that? Did you have questions around that? Or did you just get distracted and do something else? If you saw a call or a text that came in with that type of personalization, again, and also knowing who's calling you, that makes it a big deal. You're more likely to pick up the phone, or you're more likely to engage with that text message and have a conversation. So again, we'll share this at the end, anyone who wants these, and we can go into more detail. But really, you're just confirming, does someone have an outbound team? And what challenges do they have with the technology they're using for those efforts today? So this is the Regal solution end to end, like we discussed. If you would like to have Regal as your CCaaS for your outbound team, we can be the full stack. You see here that we have a dialer, we use a unified desktop. But we understand that that might not be where you want to start. You do have your traditional CCaaS, so you might say, I don't want to switch this all over. I would like this to work alongside of, and maybe let's start with branding our calls. So when Mandy calls me, it now says Regal. Or let's just remove those spam likely tags that we've all seen too much. That's a great place to start. And then even a next step, let's start adding in some text messages. These are easy ways which are very quick to implement and very high in terms of, effective ROI. So again, if you're going from a 3 to 5% answer rate because you're not branding calls today, or all of your numbers are coming in as spam, just changing that little effort gets you more to that 20, 30% answer rate. So huge ROI, little lift. And as we start to see this ROI increase and what's doing well for your company, driving revenue, let's start adding in these other features that make sense for your outbound agents. So going through who's the right fit for Regal, we've already said when you've identified they have an outbound team, that's the right fit. But digging in a little bit deeper, right, we're looking for like 20 seats and over, or about 100,000 minutes a month in outbound call volume. So you're looking for a lot of dials being made. And again, it's that small team of your outbound agents that we're really focusing. So not the whole contact center. We can keep those inbound where they are. Just looking at how does that outbound team look? Customers that you want to be meeting with are customers that own a revenue quota. Someone who's tied to a dollar amount at the end of the year is a great place to think where Regal makes sense, because that's the sole purpose is we're driving revenue. So think your CROs, VPs of sales, anyone who's running this outbound team on the contact center end. So today specifically, we have Julia talking with us about healthcare, which is a little bit different from your traditional conversation about contact center in general. But you can see here, and we'll go on the next slide, which verticals that we do really well in. Again, think of where we have a lot of data about customers, where they're coming into the website, where they've made calls or questions before, and those high intent purchases as well. So somewhere where you maybe want a personal touch, or you'd like someone to be really specific on your needs. So again, insurance, financial services, education, like with enrollment, when you're making big purchases like finding electricians, buying a mattress. That's where we think of those high intent, high data spots. What's unique to Regal is the sales cycle is extremely short. So we're looking at a 30 to 45 day turnaround from first conversation to getting this implemented. Because when we talk about, again, these lower lift, right? Just starting to brand the calls, that takes just a couple of days to turn that on. And then again, when we're iterating or testing what's working, what's not, we can see pretty immediately, okay, you chose to brand half of your calls, and now look at what we're doing in addition to what you're doing before. And same thing with implementation. So our implementation period is extremely short, going around that 45-day mark. So when you think traditional CCaaS conversations, I know that these are like 6 to 12-month sales cycles, really long. Implementation can be just as long, if not longer. Because we're dealing with a smaller subset that's extremely tailored, this is, again, like a 30 to 45-day implementation period, sometimes even quicker when we're just, dipping our toes in with some of those things like omni-channel outreach and branded calling. So finally, in terms of our verticals, we showed this on the last screen. These are where we really do well. And again, where you're going to see that short sales cycle when we're talking to the right buyer, that very quick implementation. So you, as a trusted advisor, can now come in and say, all right, we want to just talk about this team, get that immediate ROI. You're driving revenue and dollars quickly. And then what we do from that is then now you can open up the door to, hey, are you thinking a digital transformation for your other contact center, for the main, customer service, right? Your inbound. Are you having other projects? Because you've now proven this huge ROI in such a short amount of time. It's a great conversation that really shows, okay, you were coming in here to actually help us with this pain point that we needed more revenue, and we just didn't really know how to make our agents better by, providing them with a better access to our end user customers. So with that, we have Julia with us today, who focuses specifically on healthcare for us. So she's in and out of these deals all day long. She's going to talk a little bit about one of our current customers. And then in addition, just some high level talking points. If you have healthcare customers out there and you want to say, hey, how do I even bring up this conversation? So Julia, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mandy. Yeah. So, obviously, Mandy said I lead our healthcare team. I would say the largest difference between healthcare against local services, residential services, insurance type of use case is it's less focused around sales and increased in sales, and more focused just overall in engagement rate. So how you're engaging with patients, when you're engaging with patients. And the slight difference is sometimes we fit really nicely into the business to consumer, direct to consumer healthcare space, where consumers are going straight to the website, similar to a local services or an insurance use case. But kind of additionally, we also fit really nicely sometimes into this business to consumer, where the healthcare companies still have to interact with the customer or the patient, but they aren't going directly to the customer themselves first, whether that's through the customer's or the patient's employer or health plan. Additionally, kind of outside, just seeing an overall increase in revenue within healthcare, something that a lot of what they use Regal for is to just ensure compliance. So making sure that they are calling patients when they're supposed to call patients, because you have to call a patient if you're prescribing medication to them, making sure that no one's falling through the cracks, and overall just improving those patient outcomes. So Perry Health is a very kind of interesting use case and customer of ours, because they started with their sales team using Regal. That sales team alone saw a 50% lift in their current engagement rate. Overall, a 23% improvement in outcomes. So again, that would be likened to conversion. So 23% more patients were actually using their device. What their device is a wearable glucose monitor. and just overall like an increase in productivity. So it was helping with efficiency on the team, helping them actually connect with the right patients and actually helping them convert those patients. After they saw those positive kind of increases with Regal, they actually now also have a like nurse team that sits in Regal where beyond sending data from their website to like generate trigger and events, we also get data directly from their glucose monitors. So if a patient's glucose is reading too high or too low, it will trigger an event for a nurse to either call or text that patient depending on the time that the glucose has read too high or too low and what it is actually reading. So now they're making sure that their patients are, again, safe. So it's outside of that sales use case and more so on the nurse and care side.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, if you think about, like this in this particular example, when you have a device or something like that, Regal is an open API solution. So being able to take in that data that's coming, to whatever tools they're using on the back end and being able to alert agents like that is really unique. And again, when you think about healthcare choices or some of these that you're making, you are making them for a customer experience, right? Like there are a lot of healthcare opportunities out there, but if they had more of this, yeah, we have these abilities to help you with when to be proactive and when something might be awry. That's pretty unique and really great for the healthcare company.
Completely.
Yeah, awesome. Cortland, do we have any questions?
No questions yet, but we're willing to answer.
All right. Oh, I think I have a
Looks
question.
like one just came in actually
Oh, okay.
from Tyler Thompson. So his question is, was Perry Health's original challenge to improve engagement?
Yes. So they originally came with us to improve engagement and improve efficiency because what they were doing previously was just really manual and they were calling through manual lists and it just took a long time to get through everything. So we solved that initial challenge first and then they expanded usage.
Thanks.
Okay, we have another one from John Vargo. This example seems more like a doctor referral sale and not an end user patient decision. I don't think that's a question, more maybe just more of a comment. John, was there a question in there?
I think, John, to your point, you could be right? Healthcare is a little unique. While traditionally you look at the other Regal verticals, right? It's very much looking at an end user customer, getting them on the phone or text or whatever, channel you're reaching out and then really converting that. Healthcare, like Julia said, has a little bit different outcomes relate to conversions, but what they might be monitoring on the back end might be different. Like I know, and Julia, correct me if I'm wrong, if it's Perry Health as well, but they work through Medicare. So for them, it's kind of like in order to bill, they have to do certain things on their end to show, stages of somebody's life cycle or what they're using from Perry Health.
Yeah, so in Perry Health, they actually do have like a form that you like a end user or a patient would go to Perry Health and like fill out and am I eligible for this? Part of that is insurance, part of that is like what type of diabetic you are if you're diabetic. There is an element of referrals, but it is also largely like business to consumer, direct to consumer.
Julia, can you talk about for a second, when people think healthcare, at least I know when I think healthcare, in this case, I can very clearly see the data as being extremely effective to have personalized touches. If our partners have, or they're working with like a hospital, is that a strong healthcare fit?
Not necessarily. I would say very rarely do hospitals have a centralized like call center type of team that is responsible for outbound. So largely it's usually like an inbound use case or they're following up. It's like very rarely are they calling for prescriptions or medications or like true appointments. I would say like the best fit for Regal in terms of like healthcare outside of hospitals and health systems would be like a digital like health tech forward company like a Perry Health, like a Row, that like has websites, people are familiar with them, they come and they fill out forms instead of like a traditional hospital in the sense of healthcare.
Awesome. No, that's great insight.
We have one more question from Tyler. Can you repeat what improvement of outcomes meant with the 23%?
Yeah, so this just meant that 23% more patients were using and leveraging their glucose monitors, and they effectively converted 23% more patients.
So Julie, does that mean like they have access to all that data and had conversations versus maybe they just like shipped something out there and then had no idea if it was being used or not?
It basically just means that they were able to like connect with more patients faster, and they were connecting with more people. Therefore, it was leading to more conversions and more patients actually deciding that their glucose monitor was the glucose monitor they were going to use.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Awesome. Well, guys, again, if we don't have any more questions, sorry, I know I'm sharing my screen, so moving a little blind here. No, but this is great. Thank you for hopping on with us today. Julia, thank you so much for joining us. Cortland as well. If anybody is interested and you want to do a deeper dive and you want to go into some more use cases around healthcare or any of our other verticals, if you'd like to schedule a demo with me and our team, we will send up a follow-up from this, but my email is Mandy, MANDI @regal.io. So we can set up time to do that. And then we do have 2 more webinars coming up for the next 2 Wednesdays in both local services and banking and lending. And then in addition, we're going to have some in-person events. So I'll be sharing those regularly with where we'll be, where you can meet our sales team and get to know us a little bit more. But thanks so much, and everyone, happy Wednesday.